Sticking with sports,
Yeah.
there's a really interesting relationship here between what I see as Nike trying to do the right thing when they put someone who I have spoken with, know members of his camp, love him, Colin Kaepernick, was kicked out of the NFL. Let's keep it real. And he does campaigns with Nike. And I'm curious how you see this because, as we know, Nike engages in what we should deem and the world should deem as unfair labor practices, yet they are saying they care about social justice. So, considering your line of work and the stances you take socially, how do you feel about seeing these two very important parts of a multi billion-dollar company?
Yeah, good question, unfair question. All I can say is to tell you how I reacted, and that's, a matter of my feelings, and I think I speak for other people too, but let me be clear, it's just my own feeling. I have criticized and I've spoken at events calling out the production of sneakers and other objects, mostly in the Far East, by corporations like Nike and others like them. The condition in those places vary from bad to horrific, and they are all that way because it's profitable to make it that way. Nike has done what many other corporations have done, is try to get out from under responsibility for what they do by signing contracts with real or fictitious local enterprises, in China with a Chinese company or in Indonesia with an Indonesian company. And so they can say, that's not our responsibility. We buy the sneakers from the XYZ corporation over there. Nobody's fooled if you do a little bit of research, and there are lots of ways of doing that. You can find out what the game here is. And these corporations remain culpable to this day, some more, some less. And that has to be criticized and that has to be condemned because it damages the world we live in a lot of ways, not least the suffering, the poverty, the horrific lives led by often the children that work, if not directly, then indirectly in this industry as it is presently organized.
Phil Knight has denied this. He has. I remember reading his book Shoe Dog, and the closing chapter he addressed it, saying essentially that it was untrue. There has been, and I'm blanking on the gentleman's name. I apologize to him, but he went to Phil Knight's table in a restaurant and asked him about this, and Phil Knight did not answer any questions, asked him to leave. It's not just Nike. That was just one example
Yes,
of
not just like
using Colin Kaepernick in order to try and say we do care about this stuff, which is great. The problem is they don't go the full mile. So for all these companies, including, by the way, with videos that I've seen on TikTok from activists, the amount of clothes and shoes that are washed up and almost filling parts of the ocean, depending on which part of the world you are in. This relationship between capitalism and sports is, would you say, detrimental to our society?
absolutely. Sports are, let's be honest with one another, sports are a selling item. You can get people to buy something if you associate it with a sport that these people are interested in or engaged in or spectators of. You know, it's like certain other things that are liked by human beings become means to pull money out of their wallets. The one we're most famous, the most famous one that the whole industry looks at, and the whole economics that I study of advertising has taught us, is sex. I mean, we sell almost everything by making it suggestive. We have a three-quarters naked young lady draped across the fender of some car. And why? Because we've discovered, and there really are, psychological studies of all of this, that in the minds of men, there's a fantasy, they haven't lost touch with reality, but there's a fantasy life that implies that if you buy the car, maybe somehow you'll get the girl too. And you're not lonely, and you would like some companionship. Blah, 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 blah. So we take an object we want you to buy, and we associate it with something that's meaningful to you. Well, sports is meaningful to large numbers of people. And so it becomes a mechanism for selling. So absolutely, Colin Kaepernick, who I also, saw as a hero for being willing to take a knee and to make a statement. I find that admirable wherever I see it. And then number two, I felt for him for being punished, even though his so-called athleticism really couldn't be questioned. So it was pretty obvious to everybody I know that he was being excluded from the NFL because they didn't like to deal with the upset about him being visible on his knee there. Okay, I mean, I understand what's going on, but all my sympathy, and I can tell you an awful lot of other people I know, all their sympathy was with him, and none of it. The NFL did not come out looking at all good about doing anything. I can understand for people who, I'm trying to be polite, who are very conservative or something like that, them wanting to see him punished. But for someone who admires genuine athleticism, for someone who admires someone who's already proven his extraordinary capabilities on the field that he's famous for, having decided that he has a statement to make about an issue that a lot of Americans agree with him on.
Right.
A lot who don't, I get that, but there's a lot who that's not what about that is to be punished? And my answer is nothing. That's his right. He's an American. He's in a situation where his act can be supportive and inspiring for large numbers of people. He ought to be free to do it. He's not hurting anybody. He's making a statement. I thought we were a country that was supposed to encourage that sort of thing, not punish it in the way that he was punished and in the way that an awful lot of people who should know better seem to support that he could be and should be shut out of the sport that he loved, of the teams that could have used him, and of the public that would have liked to watch him, all of which were denied all of this because some boss somewhere in that team had the power to say, I'm going to appeal to some other part of the population by destroying this guy's career. I mean, I'm ashamed of it. That's the truth of it.